Hey, I'm on the edge of my seat here, back again with another brand new video, and today I will be no damaging all the boss fights in God of War 1. And technically, this Hydra here may or may not be a boss fight. I mean, this is really more a tutorial fight just to kind of get you more assimilated with the combat and whatnot. It's not really the big boss fight, but I decided to include it just because it has its own health bar, and that is something which I'll talk about later. And also, there's only 3 big boss fights in this game. There is another one which like certain other videos include, like, I don't know, the other like God of War 1 PS2 like no damage videos include like a Medusa boss fight, but that isn't really a boss fight, you know? It's like when you meet Aphrodite, if that's how you pronounce her name, and like she gives you like the power of the Gorgon head, and you have to like fight a Medusa to get it. Like some people like include that as a boss fight in their video, but it's not a boss fight, because like later in the game you end up fighting like 4 of those at the same time. So like if you're gonna include that one Medusa fight, like why not include the one where you fight 4 of them at the same time? It's because like it's not a boss fight, that's just a common enemy. Like every boss fight in this game in particular has its own health bar, and I really like that. It's a cool stylistic choice, you know, like the Hydras have their own stylized health bars, the second boss fight has its own stylized health bar, and the final boss once again has its own stylized health bar. Like the only real consistency between them is that they're all green. You know, they all have like that Kiwami extreme energy to them. And here, boom. I like how they introduced this as, you know, play the mini game, because, you know, we're just so used to calling these sort of events QTEs, but does any game really call them QuickTime events? I mean, has any game really coined the term QuickTime events? I mean, was that Shenmue? Because, I mean, Shenmue does get credited with, like, creating the QTE in general, so does Shenmue, like, literally call them QuickTime events? I guess I better play that game to be certain. So that first boss fight didn't really require much strategy. You just kind of attack and then block when it attacks you, and you do kind of have to get used to, like, its, you know, like, attack strings and all that. Like, I kind of do a thing where I do, like, light, heavy, and, you know, if it moves a little too fast, I don't do the heavy. This part here, though, is a little bit more complicated, so you don't want to do that, because when it's recovering, its hitbox isn't really in the center there, even though its entire body is. Like, it's a little stupid like that. So whenever the Hydra tries to go for like a grab, you can just do a QT and you won't take damage from it. And whenever the Hydra kind of preps itself to do like a little water circle thing, you can just block that. That attack, however, you cannot block. However, you also have to be careful with this one. You can't really do too many heavy attacks with this Hydra, because sometimes the Hydra will just do the quick attack. And in this attempt, the Hydra rarely did the quick attack. It will do that sort of quick attack, like, you know, in its actual fight. But for now, see, here's what you want to do. You want to land the heavy there, because it's actually going to hit the Hydra. If you try to land it in like the middle, in like the circle, while it's still recovering, it's just probably not going to hit it. Also, so I mean, I did the no damage of God of War 3. That was kind of my first no damage. And while I'm here, I would like to say that I actually did stream the entirety of God of War 1, just kind of played through the entire game on God mode. And oh yeah, I am playing on God mode, which is the very hard mode of this game. And I didn't know exactly what to title the video, whether it's to title it God mode or very hard, but I decided to go with God mode because, you know, it's God mode. Like I named my God of War 3 video, you know, the Chaos. So I decided to name it God mode. I didn't want to name it like God of War God No Damage, because I feel that would be a little too confusing, so I decided to include the mode in there, just kind of to ease things up. Hey, look at this.
It's the giant one! He keeps healing the others!
No, God! We'll never get out of here! Doomed! We're doomed! We're all... Save me.
That roar is awesome. Also, I'll have to clarify that I am playing the PS3 HD collection on a PS3. I have been made aware that you could stream this game on the PS5, and I heard that version is awful because it has a bunch of input delay, and God of War 1 is the most demanding game when it comes to button mashing. Like whenever you have to mash like the circle button, this one is insanely hard for that. Like you have to mash the ever-loving shit out of that button or it will not work, especially in like some of the final parts. So you have to be ready to maybe break your controller. Thankfully, I didn't, but like with the amount of like mashing you have to do and like the intensity of it, you could end up breaking your PS3, PS2 controller, or even definitely PS5 controller if you're trying to stream. If you're trying to like stream this game from like the PS5 backwards compatibility streaming mines or whatever they use to like make it backwards compatible in the worst way possible. Just let people on PS5 download the PS3 HD collection. Like, why is that so hard? Just like, you know, because like this whole streaming thing, just there's way too much input delay for God of War 1 specifically. I mean, unless they come out with like a big fix for it, it's just screwed right now. So the strategy for these things is that every time like one of them tries to like pull you over with like its ice breath or whatever, you can do a full combo on it, just boom 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 boom. And also just comboing it, like, it pretty much interrupts whatever big attack they're winding up. And then, like, once you land your, like, final hit, be ready to block, because they're going to go for the quick attack. And just keep doing that until you get to this point, and then you get to jump up and kind of stab it with a platform. So I kind of, like, dished out damage equally between them. You know, I didn't try to prioritize any, like, snake. I just kind of went with the flow. You know, if a Hydra pulls me there, I'm there. And if the Hydra pulls me over there, I'm also there. So I want to mention a couple fun facts about this game. So Zeus actually has a different voice in this game. I don't know, in the future games he has a more well, in this game he's voiced by the same person who voices Ben 10's granddad. Like, if you ever seen the series Ben 10, played any of the games, that voice actor for like his granddad, he voices Zeus in this game. It's just kind of weird. Like, all the gods kind of have different voices. Poseidon, Hades, like, I don't think Hades is voiced by Mr. Krabs in this game. That's like a God of War 3 exclusive thing. And now here's the big Hydra, and this one's like actually hard because you can't just combo it endlessly. You kind of have to avoid its attacks. So you could have like iframe through its bite attacks by spamming lightning, but you don't have infinite magic, so sometimes you kind of have to move away and just kind of let it do its thing. And see, this attack here, I'm not 100% sure how to avoid like its side bites. Like, it has its big main bite, you know, it winds it up like that. Whenever it does its big main bites, you just kind of move away like that, and then like you can do a combo like that most of the time. Sometimes if you try to combo him, you'll like kind of dodge away from you and do like another attack. See, whenever it does like one of its like left or right bites, I don't know exactly how to predict it because like I just keep messing up like the dodge timings for that. And whenever it does a big roar, you can actually like align yourself against this pole, you know, kind of jump up and do a combo that way, just so you don't get knocked out the thing. And here, I don't know if it was controller drift or just my own ability, but I just accidentally knocked myself off of there for no reason. There was no strategy to that. I just like messed up. Like, my PS3 controller is pretty old. It is like prone to drifting, and frankly it's just a little dirty. I gotta like clean that blue PS3 controller, because like the blue model of the PS3 controller is dope, but it's just like mine just has a lot of grain in it, just like a lot of things I'd rather not go into detail with. But yeah, like the main thing with this Hydra here is pretty much just do a bunch of QTEs. There's like four of these you have to do. And in the beginning, you can kind of like, you know, dodge away from like the Hydra's attacks. And see, if you're up in the air, the roar actually won't knock you off the platform. But if you're down on the ground and, you know, you're not constantly moving forward or like blocking its attacks, it will this Hydra will roar you off that platform. So you kind of have to be careful with that. And what I remember is that in the final phase of like the Hydra here, you know, when you do the final QTE, it stops like, you know, reacting to your attacks. You know how sometimes I dodge away from the Hydra and like I attack it and it just kind of like lets me attack it for a bit? That stops completely once you reach like the final phase of the fight, which might be this one. So you kind of want to save your magic for this final phase. That doesn't mean don't use magic before, just don't spam it. Because the only time you really want to spam magic is right now, because you won't really be able to get as many clean hits as before with the Hydra. At least that's how it worked for me in like most of the attempts I've done. Like here, I just get really lucky. I just keep landing a ton of good hits, and for some reason the Hydra decides, you know what, now's a good time to roar, but this is like its detriment. This is what will lead to it dying. And yeah, once it reaches like this animation, it's ready to die. There's gonna be a big circle around it, just yeah, that sound effect. But yeah, no, like Poseidon's, Aphrodite, like they all have different voices. Like Kratos keeps the same voice, but that is until like the 2018 game, you know, they kind of changed it there. And apparently they didn't inform the original actor that they were replacing him, which does suck. And hey, check this out. Kratos' model in this first game does have a really nice tortured look to it, but it also looks kind of dated. You know, he looks a little too blocky. Like, his model in God of War 2 does kind of smooth him out, but it is kind of funny. He does have slight resemblances to, like, handsome Squidward in the second game, but his model isn't as blocky as it is here. Like, I don't know, they kind of touched the textures a bit, so on and so forth. And I want to apologize to this boss fight because before fighting him here, I kind of assumed he was designed like a Lego boss fight, you know, like it's just all a puzzle, you know, you have to like solve it, and then once you solve it, you just kind of flip the switch and it's over. However, no, this boss fight is a lot more intense than I gave it credit for. So yeah, whenever he does the big horn attack, you have to block it twice. Block it when he like pulls it up, when he like stomps it down, and then like block it when he like pulls it out of the ground. It's like 2 times you have to block. And then there comes a point where, like, after dealing enough damage, it kind of like cuts, the camera kind of cuts to the boss fight where he goes like, ooh, that kind of hurt a bit. And then once that happens, activate your Rage of the Gods, spam lightning, and if you do it 3 times, then you just get to use QT. And I hate these style of QTs where you have to like flick the stick around. Just, it's awful. Like, you know, sometimes I flick the stick the wrong way and it still works, and it just, honestly, I kind of hate it more because of that. And it's just like, you have to do this QT twice if you don't cheese this fight. Now, when I say cheese this fight, what do I mean? Okay, so here I'm using like the Hermes dash or whatever that move is called. You press R1 to do it, and this is like a very nice way to get around. I heard they actually get rid of this move in the second game, which is just a real sadness. I'm really sad about that. Okay, so while this cutscene is happening, you can actually pull the lever again, and you can just skip to the 3rd phase immediately. So whenever this boss fight does like the second stomp, that's when you want to start doing your jumps. Okay, whenever he does the collapse, you jump up and you do like the blocking, like, you know, heavy attack. You know, like, block, press triangle, you'll do the spinning attack. You just keep spamming that a bunch of times whenever he does the clap. You can do that spinning attack like 3 times. And then whenever like this boss fight like tries to hit you with like his right fist, which is on the left screen, you can block that hit. You cannot block that though. You can block that attack though, and then you can kind of parry back at him. So pretty much just kind of a game of, you know, he has like 4 or 5 attacks you have to watch out for, but it's like if you want to keep constant damage on this guy, you have to fight him this way. I don't know, like with some of the other no damage videos I saw, like fighting this boss fight, they fought him in like a more boring way, you know, kind of one where you don't really do as many combos, and I just didn't want to do that. So instead I'm just going hog wild on him, you know, like spinning, just a bunch of stuff happening. Also, something you have to keep in mind in the second phase is, you know, there comes a point where you deal enough damage that the boss fight just kind of runs away from you. He kind of like jumps back and like starts rushing back at you. Okay, so he's going to do that 5 times. On the 5th time that you knock him back, you actually have to follow him because he's going to go back all the way to the door, and you have to do a QTE, pretty much like the same QTE as before. And like if you're not fast enough, he just gets back up and you have to like hit him again to kind of put him back in that state. Okay, whenever he does that attack is very dangerous because it's actually a grab. And the way I usually dodge it is by doing just that, but sometimes it doesn't work because the hit detection is kind of hell. See, that was the 5th time, and I rushed all the way to him just so I could do his QT before he gets back up, because he does get back up super quickly. Like, in the grand scheme of things, like out of the 3 boss fights in this game, this may actually be my favorite one just because like it is the most intense one. It just keeps you on your toes, you know, it's pretty long. Like, see, I thought the final boss was my favorite, but the thing with the final boss is that the 1st and 3rd phase can be cheesed really easily, or just if you're playing it good, he goes down in less than a minute in like the 1st and 3rd phase, and that's exactly what I do. You're gonna see what I mean when we get there, but it's ridiculous. So yeah, you see, you could have actually done this a lot sooner if you kind of exploited the game. But right now we're like in his 3rd phase, and we're gonna do that. And also, another fun thing about this fight is that you don't necessarily have to fight him like this. You could continue to fight the, like, Pandora's Guardian Minotaur, you know, call him what you like, on the ground, and that's like a completely different fight. So, like, it's not completely structured like a Lego game. You can kind of have some fun with him, you know, and he is, like, kind of coded around that, you know, thing. You see, like, this guy does just kind of, like, boil down to, you know, you have to, you know, slash at a big guy, and he has very predictable attacks, but, you know, in the grand legacy of giant boss fights which have slow attack patterns, this is probably one of the best ones. Like, it's just super quick, you know, super nice. You know, you can like counter anything he throws at you. There's no like necessary like waiting. There's no like unnecessary waiting you have to do. You know, sometimes like the annoyance with these boss fights is like they'll have like an attack where you have to kind of like, you know, walk away from them and wait for them to finish just so you can deal like 2 or 3 hits. But this guy, you can keep constantly on the offensive. You know, it's just like, it's like a punch out match. You know, it's like boom, 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 boom. Just, I don't know, like, I'm just having a lot of fun. You know, just spamming this attack like, ah! And, you know, the only parts I don't like about this guy is just, like, that weird-ass grab detection with, like, you know, his like, left arm, right arm attack. You know, I'm just gonna call it from like how you see it. Oh, his right arm. See, that attack is just kind of awful, and like my previous tactic was like to use lightning to avoid that attack, but you can't just spam lightning every time he does that attack, because sometimes he just keeps doing that attack like 4 or 5 times in a row, and by that point you've completely run out of lightning, and you really do want to save your lightning for the final phase, because like right now it's not so bad, but like, you know, in the final phase he starts to get a little weird. Also, this boss fight tends to do different attacks based on where you're positioned. Like, I'm kind of in the middle, so a lot of the time this boss fight likes to do the big clapping attack, and that's very good for me. But if you move a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, this boss fight starts to do a little bit more experimental attacks. And here I'm going to go into my super mode, which I don't really utilize as best as I want to, but this super mode does allow you to deal more damage. And also just looks sick. It's just that this combo, you can't really dodge or block out of it nearly as quickly as your normal hits. And that is kind of annoying, but at least you can block in the super mode, because you know, once you activate the super mode in like God of War 3, you can't block, and that's very annoying. Like, I hope that the super mode in God of War 2 is as useful as it is in this game. I heard it's longer, I just don't know if it's as useful. Oh yeah, once this boss fight is in this final phase, it stops getting stunned. There's not going to be a moment where this boss fight goes back like, oh, you hit me. Like, it's just going to stay here like for a constant fight. You know, it's going to do its attacks, it's going to tank everything. So you can't really rely on like one of your lucky hits, like, you know, stunning him and sending him back, because sometimes I do get really lucky with my attacks, and they do end up like, you know, just yeah. See, that attack, I do not like that attack at all, because I don't even know how to dodge it. I just kind of did the spinning like light attack, you know, like the block square attack. You know, whenever he does one of those attacks, I do one of those attacks. I hope that what I'm saying makes sense. I will say that I do get a little bit more elaborate with what I'm thinking with this game in my streams, and just like my stream of the game is like 16 hours. It's like a 26-minute video, so I'm definitely not going to be able to like capture every thought I have about this game in this video, because I think I've captured most of my thoughts while I was playing it. So, but there's a few things I do want to mention though, and I will say my combo meter gets a little insane during this fight. Like, I'm reaching the hundreds. Look at that, merciless, like 114 hits during this boss fight. I didn't expect it, and I also didn't expect this one to be my favorite from this game. I also didn't expect this game to be less frustrating than the third one. I actually expected this one to be harder, and it is, but like the hardest parts of God of War 3 on the hardest difficulty, I'd say are harder than the hardest parts of this game on the hardest difficulty. This game is honestly a bit more fair than I was expecting. Like, consistently it is harder, and one reason why it is consistently harder is you don't have like the tackle move, but another reason is because enemy telegraphs just are way... Some enemies just straight up don't have telegraphs. Let me talk about the Medusas. Like, the Medusas do not have telegraph animation. They just stop getting hit, they kind of dodge slightly away from you, and that's when they're going to attack you. Like, in God of War 3, like the Medusas, they will like dodge away from you and then do like a telegraph animation. Well, the God of War 1 Medusas do that, except they don't have the telegraph animation. They just dodge away from you and then they're immediately going to hit you. Like, you know, in God of War 3, like the timing to parry those Medusas is when they're doing their telegraph animation. But the timing to parry like the Medusas in God of War 1 is when they dodge away from you. Like, that's like the exact time you have to block them, and it's just insanely frustrating. They're just an awful enemy. I hate dealing with them. Just like, ugh, like they are not a boss fight. Don't try to tell me in the comments that that Medusa, that bitch-ass Medusa is a boss fight. It's not true. Doesn't have a health bar, okay? Like, don't even talk to me about that.
Your final lesson is at hand.
I'm going to absolutely cheese this guy, because when you fully upgrade your Blades of Chaos, like, and you activate God mode, you have infinite magic. So I'm going to send out, like, Hades things to kind of, like, destroy him, and, like, that's kind of what, like, helps him out. You know, just kill him. Like, look at that. We already like destroyed half of his health bar, and we just like spammed the Hades things twice and lightning twice and did a few combos here and there, and it's over. Whenever he does that attack, you want to block it, but like in the beginning of this fight, he will always do like a hammer attack where like if you can't really block the first hit, you have to like kind of perfect dodge him to like get iframes. And here I'm gonna get really lucky. I just cannot send out Hades things, and I'm just gonna completely demolish this guy. And just like, some of this is luck-based, because sometimes like he won't behave the way you want him to. Sometimes Hades things won't stun him like that. So a lot of this is just really, really good timing. And here you have to mash the circle button for dear life. And when I played this as a kid, I mashed the circle button for dear life. Like, it was actually hard for me to mash it, so I just mashed it for dear life, nearly breaking my controller. And then the game hit me with like that instant QTE, like right after mashing the circle button, and I failed the QTE because I was so busy mashing the circle button. Now I've improved as a gamer where I can like actually react to that QTE, but back then this was complete hell for me, and I wasn't even playing on God mode. I was playing on like very hard, like I was playing on like hard mode, which was like hero or superhero or whatever that was. So yeah, it was just insane. And while I'm talking about this game, like every single enemy in this game like is harder to fight than in future games, like in 3. Because in 3, they're easier to stun, while sometimes like enemies in this game, like if they're in the middle of an attack, they cannot be stunned. But in 3, if they're in the middle of an attack, you can still stun them, so it does make them easier to fight. But the one enemy in this game, which is actually easier to fight than in future entries, is the Egyptian dog enemies, which they're not even Egyptian dogs, they just kind of look like them. They're like complete hell to fight in 3, but in this game, they're actually not that bad. You can like juggle them super easily, while in like God of War 3, they just instantly grab you most of the time if you try to do any fancy combos on them. But in 1, they're just not as aggressive, which is weird because every single other enemy type is more aggressive and is like harder to deal with and does have less telegraphs. But the dogs, you know, hell yeah, like you can kill them like so easily. Two dogs, like, I mean, they're not easy, but they're nowhere near as hard as they are in 3. And oh yeah, so here, the second phase of Ares' fight is complete hell and is like the hardest thing in the game. However, once you figure out the strategy, it's not too bad. So my strategy is to kind of stay away and like kind of do this, though that's not what I'm going to be doing the entire time. I have a backup plan in case my family takes too much damage. In fact, it's not really a backup plan. I'm actually like depending on my family to take a lot of damage because I have the Rage of the Gods fully filled and I'm waiting to use it because spoiler alert, I will be taking damage because I'm going to hug my family. Now, you could try to do a true no damage or whatever of this fight by not hugging your family so you never take damage. But me, like, I don't want to abandon my family value of hugging my wife, so I'm gonna have to include it. I'm sorry, like, I know no damage is important, but like, I have to hug my wife. There's just no way around this. And also, hugging my wife is essential to the strategy I'm gonna do. So, you see, what I'm gonna do is pretty much like I activate Rage of the Gods when my wife has low health, and then I send out Hades things, and I just spam lightning until like, you know, I spam lightning until my Rage of the Gods like ends, and even when it ends, I spam lightning one more time because I have a full magic bar, and then I send out Hades like things again because whenever you send out Hades' things, you can heal your wife like, you know, somewhat safely, and healing your wife fills up your Rage of the Gods again, and once I have my Rage of the Gods filled again, I'm gonna spam lightning for the rest of the fight, and the fight is over. So there is a somewhat easy way to do this, but a lot of this does have some luck, because sometimes when you're hugging your wife, your other Kratoses get jealous, and they try to hit you. And it's just like, bro, you're me. Like, why are you jealous of me? Like, get out of here. And, like, by the time you're done with this, there will be so little Kratoses. Like, I mean, the lightning Kratos might hit you by accident, and also, like, these big sword Kratoses, they deal a fuck ton of damage to your wife, because their sword is very fucking massive. So you want to kill those guys very fast, but yeah, like, I mean, this is the hardest part in the game, but if you have a solid strategy like this one, it's not the worst thing in the world. In fact, like, this no damage video was much easier to do than my God of War 3 no damage video, because some of the boss fights in God of War 3 took me days to no damage, because some of them were just a straight up level. While in this game, none of these boss fights took me more than like a couple hours. Like, not a single one of these fights, which I no damage tier, took me more than a day to do. Like, the worst parts of this game was like that one part where there's like 2 circles and you have to like kill 4 horse dudes to like inside the circle. That part is genuinely painful. There's also the introduction of the big dog. Like, that section of the game is awful too. Like, I mean, if you follow the Medusa strategy and like instantly kill the big dog and deal with the little dogs, it's not that bad, but it is still very painful and also very tricky. And then there's like the harpy room where there's like a conveyor belt on, like, you know, left and right sides, and like if you follow a certain speedrun strategy, that won't be too hard either, but that room is still hell. Those are like the 3 worst parts of the game, and the rest of the game is honestly pretty like enjoyable. You know, it's like more challenging than the third one, but it's kind of like a nice sweet spot of challenge. You know, like it's a challenge where at first you're like, oh man, this freaking sucks, and then like when you figure out like a cool strategy, you're like, oh, this freaking rocks. And here we have the final boss, you know, like the final phase of Ares, and this phase is not as hard as the second phase, but the third phase is honestly harder than the first phase, if that makes sense. Just like there's honestly some luck parts to this because, okay, so most of the time Ares will rush at you and do like a fireball attack, but this time I got lucky, and see this sword clash here. Sometimes this doesn't happen. Sometimes when you do an attack like that and Ares tries to, like, you know, guard break you or something, he just guard breaks you and it deals damage. You know, if you're clashing swords, it doesn't deal damage, but if the other animation happens, it does deal damage. Okay, so this attack, I really like this attack because you can just kind of like dodge in, just deal a bunch of damage to them. See, I hate that attack though because you can like block everything Ares does except for that, and like there's just no telegraph where he just runs up to you and does it. So you kind of have to like predict it and get lucky because I just don't see how you can predict that fireball attack. You can't really react to it. And see, the thing is, this fight is really hard, but if you do actually succeed at the no damage, it ends in less than a minute because, you know, this fight has this whole gimmick where you're stealing health from him and he can steal health from you. So like during a normal playthrough, this fight does kind of have a bit more back and forth going on, and I still do really like this final boss fight. And we've reached the end of the video. I don't know, usually these sort of videos go on longer, and, you know, future God of War videos, which I will be no damage, you know, future God of War games, which I will no damage, will be longer. God of War 2 has a lot more boss fights. My God of War 3 video is longer, and I know 2018 is like a 40-hour game, so that will definitely have more boss fights going on. And I will see you then. I can't say that my next video is God of War 2, but I do plan on no damaging the boss fights in God of War 2, so look forward to that in the next month or so. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. You know, I'm on the edge of my seat here, and I will see you then.
Impossible. A mortal defeating a god. Ares was no more.